Feels like we're under the lair, under the main ground here, like we're the evil people in the basement that nobody wants to talk to, which is a thing I'm used to. So I worked for Microsoft for a long time. So yeah, I'm going to talk about AI and UX and basically how AI has become this thing that is all encompassing of what we do and how people become formulaic in their implementation of AI in their products. So all the resources that I'm cover is here in this QR code, so you can scan that with your phone if you want to, or you can type in gist.github.com poet7AFA, or you can just scan the QR code. That's the other option of doing that. So who am I? I'm 25 years a web developer. I wrote 3 JavaScript books. I contributed to a dozen others. That's not Java, that's JavaScript, like car to carpet or ham to hamster. I'm a W3C member on machine learning on device group, making sure that back then we actually made devices, made AI actually more privacy focused by being on device rather than in the cloud. I worked on Firefox and Microsoft Edge, the Chromium developer tools, and VS Code integration was my last 5 years. And now I'm the VP at DevRel at wearedevelopers.com. In that job, I'm actually looking after an event that has 15,000 developers, 8,000 companies, and 500 speakers. So the last 2 weeks, I looked at all the CFPs for that conference, 1,700 of them. And 79 were about AI, 15 were about AI ethics, 101 were about Gen AI and tools and other stuff, and so on and so forth. So in essence, what I learned from that is that AI is basically all over the shop. I'm also doing a newsletter for my company that has 15,000 subscribers every week, which I have to finish in the next 2 hours as well to send it out, but that's okay. And in that one, I basically deep dive into like all the stuff that's happening in the AI world. And when I looked after that for a few months, I realized one thing. The way that tech companies deal with adding AI to their products is a bit like that. More AI, and then we put some stuff in, then we put some more AI on it, then we put some things in, then make it spicy, put some AI on top of that if you want to, then make it more extra, then put some AI in there and some extra frameworks, and then put some AI on top of that. And that's basically the world that we live in right now. Like, oh my God, your product has to have AI or you're gonna be off the market. And the big thing that made that happen was ChatGPT. ChatGPT was the fastest growing consumer app in internet history, 100 million users in over 2 months. And the question is, what is a user? Is a user somebody that opened it, tried it out, and closed it? Is a user that is a bot that follows it? Is a user that somebody that paid for it or downloaded it? So all these growth numbers were actually kind of boring to me. But the release of ChatGPT was kind of a perfect storm. Web search gave up on providing free real results, and that's my biggest problem. Web search is dead. I worked on Yahoo, I worked on Bing, I worked on Google to a degree as well, and I loved it to bits that I can put things on the internet and years later people find it. Now you actually find the first sensible result on the 4th page of Google, because before that you find ads. You find results that have been generated for SEO purposes or actually paid for. It always cracks me up when I just know a product name. I enter a product name into a search engine and say, like, I want this product, and I get like, you might like these other 15 products. Then I would have typed in, can you tell me some random products, and not like, give me that one thing that I want. So ChatGPT gave people a different way of finding information and finding things out. So it was a great alternative to get info, and the interface appeared mock human and very sci-fi. As everybody who grew up with Star Trek was basically saying like, okay, computer, can you tell me that? Can you tell me that? Can you tell me that? And it felt really, really good and the right way to interact with a computer in 2022 or 2021. The results sounded incredibly useful because the English that ChatGPT used sounded very, very sensible. I call it mansplaining as a service, because even if it doesn't have any information, it still sounds like it knows things. It's a very like sort of somber way of talking and speaking and writing. And the other thing is like it's always positive. So it always feels like a person in California in the 1980s on some drugs that basically tells you something that is amazing and wonderful and you should use it. And that was the interface that basically everybody fell in love with or thought they fall in love with, because that's basically what it is. So you type things in and then you get an animated answer back. Google Bard did something different. It actually took the interface that actually was ChatGPT and put rounded corners on it. And that was completely groundbreaking and different. And Microsoft did it even better. When you randomly put on your trackpad, you're not doing things perfectly, then out of a sudden you got the whole chat interface on the top. And it's in your face. It offers you things that you might want to look for. Ask me anything. And if you actually start writing, if a screen reader is not working with ChatGPT, like a blind user can't use ChatGPT, you get answers that, like how to fix ChatGPT errors that are not related to that. And while you're getting the answers, it actually starts talking to you up there off screen. You don't even know that the conversation is happening. So we put these chat interfaces everywhere in there, thinking that the users are actually focusing on them, but most of the time we start blocking them out already, because it's super annoying. It's like a kid that's into dinosaurs telling you all dinosaur facts in the background all the time while you're trying to do something else. And surely that the market share would be soaring, but it turns out that integrating ChatGPT and Bing into Microsoft Edge didn't make much difference to the market share. And it annoyed just a lot of people. And it reminded me of something from long time ago. That guy. It was basically an interesting concept. When Clippy came out, people didn't know about computers. They didn't know how to use Word. They didn't know how to use text editing. So this thing actually coming up and saying, like, I help you write a letter was wonderful. Shame that it only gave you bollocks and it didn't make any sense. It was basically there in your way. So it was a UX bankruptcy and became a running joke in the UX community, because it was an annoyance rather than a helper. And now we got ClipA, and it's kind of the same thing, but now it actually gives me information that I didn't ask for, at the same time not being helpful. So things I worry about is that actually browser integration of AI tools is a thing that everybody jumps on right now. Chrome has 3 generative AI features in there. Safari just announced new features. Edge had it already, of course. And the problem with it, that it actually, to me and also to this article, kind of marks the end of the human internet. What, for example, the integration in Chrome offers you or says, like, that the tool will help you write with more confidence, whether they want to leave a well-written review for a restaurant, craft a friendly RSVP for a party, or make formal inquiry about an apartment rental. So we got machines generating user-generated human content, and other machines reading that and converting it back to user-generated content that other people should understand. The joke is that people say, like, 3 bullet points, turn this into a business email for me and send it off, and then somebody else has a plug into Outlook, turn this business email that I don't understand into 3 bullet points. So in essence, we're not necessary in that whole equation anymore, but we created a lot of content and we wasted a lot of energy to actually do something. And if anything, I think it should actually make us look at how formulaic and weird our communication has become. Like, I hope this email finds you well. No email ever found me well. You know, like, just stop wasting my time. What do you want from me? Say the one thing that I should answer and say the one thing that should be there. Have real conversations with real people on video chats and these kind of things. People have generated... I haven't got that in that talk, but I had it in a newsletter yesterday. There's a new app that makes you look like you have lots of followers on your video chat on TikTok. And people use that for dating, to impress people in pubs. Look how many followers I have. So we're actually generating people and followers, and we're generating everything around us rather than just being happy of having information out there. The Microsoft Edge integration was actually quite the first one. In the sidebar, you just get, like, the ChatGPT or whatever GPT it's called right now, Copilot, whatever. And the best thing that it did, it allowed you to create pictures. And, like, oh, now I'm creative because I can say, make an owl on a skateboard, and now I'm an artist. And it created that directly in the browser for you. And what did people use it for? Of course, creating porn. And that was the first security hole that Microsoft had to fix in the last few months. What I loved about this was, I hated that it happened, but I loved how the community around Taylor Swift, I have never listened to Taylor Swift consciously, I don't know her, but I loved that her community was basically bashing social media with like hashtags with real photos of her to make sure that that stuff vanished again. So humans can still fight the machine that other people did horrible things with. So let's talk about generative art, which is the big thing in Gen AI right now. And a lot of people's designers basically say it becomes the new stock image. You know, like the classic like office with every person from every ethical background together being happy, or women laughing at their salad. These kind of pictures that nobody wants to see any longer. And that's actually happening with AI-generated imagery, because there's a certain style to it that becomes really boring and really obvious to a degree. I do that for our newsletter because you have to. I had one, the Super Bowl was on, and I had a great article on the traffic analysis during the Super Bowl. So I said, like, make me a picture of a superhero owl in traffic. And this is the images that I got generated. Anybody realize something wrong about this? Yeah. It's like they never understood what a traffic light is about. The rest is pretty cool, but the obvious thing of bloody traffic light, it's as if the machines hadn't listened for years. And we've been asked for years and years what a traffic light looks like, and then this data goes somewhere else. I don't know what's happening there. Jesus flipping over the tables in the temple. Mother Teresa fighting poverty. I love this one. This is great. But my favorite is the expand this portrait of Descartes. Like Photoshop and others now allows you to actually do clever expanding. And this is what the Descartes looked like, the picture of him. And this is how it expanded it. You're like, well, he doesn't skip leg day, does he? And I mean, if you want to make a joke about it, at least put Descartes in front of a horse, right? That's what I did. And he basically, and that's what's really odd. Is odd. Why is there two commas? Why is therefore wrong? It might be an old writing. I don't know actually, but an M comma, and it's like the little things that go wrong every single time in these generated things are just annoying. These glitches that people call hallucinations and wonder if it's creativity. No, it's bugs. It's just bloody bugs. Like, fine, make it better, these kind of things. What's happened with the eyes there as well? I didn't even realize that. And the horses too as well. But it gets really weird. Like, this was a big thing in Australia. This is an MP from Australia. And the generated image that they used on the newsletter was this. So they exposed her midriff, although they had the picture of it, and that was like a big sexism scandal in Australia. I'm actually more concerned about the taking aim and where's she looking at. This is just really bizarre to make a picture like that and show a politician in that fashion. So when you ask people what AI is about, there was a really good research from the MIT review, I think, where they asked experts and where they asked normal readers what AI is. If it's not AI, if it could be, if it definitely is AI. And there's chatbots, translation, facial recognition. So AI is everything for everybody out there. So we got to make sure that what we do is actually helping people and not being like, okay, everything is AI. Remember when everybody said Siri is going to be changing our lives and being the thing we talk to in the morning, and Alexa and Cortana and Bixby, in case you use a Samsung device? What do we use Siri for? Siri, the pasta is cooking, give me an alarm in 5 minutes. And that's basically it. Nothing else any longer. It's not like changing our lives any longer, and neither is AI. So, should we let machines build interfaces on the fly? That, of course, is the big thing, like, oh, make me a login page and it generates the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for me. Jacob Nielsen, like the god of UX and interactivity, has really rattled the cage the other day, well, in February, where he said like that accessibility has failed. We failed to make interfaces that are available for people with disabilities, so let AI and generative systems build interfaces for users on the fly. Which is a dream that I always had. I wanted to have systems that the more I use them, the lesser interface elements I get, that actually fade away, the ones that I don't use. Or when I do a task 5 different times, it says like, okay, do you want a button to do that task? Because obviously that's basically the same pattern that you've done all the time. But we're just not there. And starting at accessibility is really dangerous because you can really block out people. And generated alternative text of images is always full of faults. And this is just, if you're a blind person, that's the first result you get from your app, probably not a good idea. Why do I have these slides twice? Okay. There's also the web is affected by that stuff. The main thing is right now that with generative content and these like systems like inside browsers allowing me to write reviews for me, to write blog posts for me, to actually generate things, means that the human internet, like real writing, real analysis, these kind of things just fall down the crack and the machines will not find them. There's a great article on that one where basically somebody took his old website and wanted to actually get it more powerful in the SEO GPT world and asked actually ChatGPT to help him change his website. And it became utter nonsense. The thing didn't make any sense at all anymore, but ranked 5 times better than his older website because it's not humans anymore using Google, but it's bots using Google and machines looking at other machines. And this is kind of sad. When I started as a web developer, I was a radio journalist. I was doing the newscasting every morning in German, and it was basically interesting, but I realized that everybody over 30 in radio is an alcoholic and unhappy because nobody cared about that medium any longer. And the internet came around, and I'm like, this is cool. I can write things. People translate the things into other languages for me. Other people write other blog posts pointing to mine, making this a work of creative work of humans together, and it's just wonderful that that works out. And this is what we're losing right now, because websites are not necessarily going to be the thing anymore that people go to. They just want answers from a chat interface, and that's actually a really bad idea. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. Because it's actually careful what you collect. These things are actually more sucking the internet like search bots ever did. Like, for example, the Leon model that is actually in most generative AI systems, Leon 5B dataset, actually has a lot of child sexual abuse materials in it. And people didn't realize that at the time. It just came out of a sudden. And you could, when your app randomly generates images that could make your app illegal because you haven't realized that it's in there. So what about code generators and assistive development? Like the biggest thing is right now co-pilots or like clever editors that actually write the code for you. GitHub just released one where it says like the whole coding experience can be in natural language, where you can say like, write this app for me, connect it to that database, to this kind of stuff. And that's kind of cool. But of course, I love that quote from Simon Willison when he did an analysis of all these things. Like, code assistance is like having a weird intern who memorized the docs, and it kind of feels like that because oftentimes you get like the results that are the most obvious ones. And when you think about how these systems have been trained, it also worries me. Stack Overflow, the first answer was never the real answer. It was the easiest answer. It was the simplest answer, the one that gave you the result immediately. Same with like W3 schools explaining CSS, not explaining it, but saying like, put this in there and change this number and hope nothing breaks, rather than like, use this is because it works like that. The why was never explained, just the how. And this is how these code assistants got trained. And that worries me because in an environment where you have to be professional, that first code was normally flawed with security problems, with performance problems, all kind of things going on there. But everything counts in large amounts. You'd really have to suck this information in. And every week there's a new model that has like 500, 600, 2 terabyte, blah, whatever. And there's actually a counter movement happening right now. So there's a list of AI agents on the internet. There's like user agent strings that you can check out and block your website. And many people who, like me, blocked for a long, long time, or or magazines or newspapers actually block these systems now from indexing their content because they don't know how the content will be displayed later on. Huge code bases are a great way to hide nasties. So this was a research that all of them have like massive critical vulnerability code in there, like massive security problematic code in the system itself. And the idea is always like it makes everything more efficient. Our developers are much more efficient because the code completion happens. Our designers I don't need to ask my designer, I just make the owl on a skateboard myself. And the problem with that is that AI powered chat systems are not as effective as we think they are. So they're kind of a trap. They take a lot of time. Starting to chat with a computer feels cool, But when you look at the watch, how long it takes you to get a result that could be a search page result, that could be an HTML document, that could be just a piece of information, it takes a lot of time to talk to the machine. That faux typing is fun at first, but it gets annoying really fast. Like when the answer, when it comes like in there, like it's typing away. If you're a neurodivergent person and you actually cannot use any animation, you can't even turn it off. Even in the operating system, if I turn off animation, ChatGPT still does the writing for me and it confuses the hell out of me. And if it starts wandering away and starts hallucinating, I'm like, stop, please stop, don't write things any longer. But it still does. It's like a really annoying person that wants to talk to you. The biggest mistake that these systems make is that discarded interaction means positive experience. So a lot of these systems, basically, when you interact with them and you get an answer and you don't interact with it any longer, okay, that was the right answer, let's upvote that next time and gift it to more users. That's like having an argument with your partner and then he or she says like, you ask like, is everything okay? Yes, everything is okay. And you know it's not okay. There's another question there that you should be asking. It's really not the end of that conversation. But you might just be pissed off with the chat system and you don't want to talk to it anymore because it didn't give you the information, and yet it gets upvoted as a great experience. And most systems don't demand context. AI is big money, and every company wants to have the best AI system right now. So none of them want to have a system that says, I don't know. And it would be great if it did. Instead of offering me random things that I don't want, it would be just great to say, like, I don't know, can you tell me about a resource where you find that? Teach the machine by asking for more context. But that none of these systems do. They just show you random results then and generic answers. It feels like going to Google and back in the days and just hitting the I feel lucky button because you get only one result. You don't get several results and it says like Bing does that to a degree. It shows you which website or information that bit of information came from. So that's kind of cool. But most of the time it's just like hitting I feel lucky and getting something. And the efficiency is not as high as we think either. When it comes to a lot of like majority jobs, humans are still cheaper than AI because it's expensive to do that all that computation. And it came out that a lot of systems that were sold as AI were actually cheap labor call center answering people typing in countries that have less salary than we have. Let's not kid ourselves. Most of the AI is just about consumption. Like, keep the people happy, give them something to do, tell them cool things, show them more cool things. 60% of the time on TikTok, then YouTube, 20% tried OpenAI's ChatGPT. We talk to the machine, we're happy with the machine. The scariest thing that I put in the newsletter later on is basically that kids start befriending AI bots rather than real humans, which is also worrying to me. But consumption is the goal, and that is always something that always hurt me when I was working at Microsoft as well. I worked on developer tools, and a good developer tool does the job and then you can discard it. How does any company measure the value of a product? Time spent in product. So if your product does the job well and people don't use it any longer, your product doesn't get listed up. Like I did an extension for Visual Studio Code that allows you to embed the browser into Visual Studio Code so you can see immediately what you're doing. And that one had like 2 million downloads, 60,000 concurrent users per day. And then like, well, but look how many people look at YouTube in the browser compared to that. And I'm like, how does this even a comparison? This is already a captive audience that uses the thing. But it's like, what can you do so people use your product more often? And I'm like, make it suck? You know, not give them the right results so they have to change things around all the time, or I don't know, like a good product is discardable to me. Like, use it, don't use it. That's why I hate apps. I love websites. I go to a website, I want to calculate pounds to stones or whatever you use, and go to the website, type that thing in, close the website. I didn't want to download a conversion app that has ads in it, that asks me to quote every single time if you like the conversion app or not. But this is all that it is right now. We try to build apps to trap people inside that one app. And that's even worse with the chat systems that we have. So let's look about some great examples and some errors that things do. The order of my slides is wrong here, but fair enough. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Image generation is a discardable thing. I always create an image and then I get a JPEG and then that's it. I cannot do anything with it. OpenDream is a system that runs on your own machine that uses the same systems to generate images, but it creates layers from it. So you can actually start changing only the background, and you don't have to ask the machine to regenerate yet another image for it. The outcome is editable rather than just being a JPEG that you do. And that's what it looks like then on your device. It's actually really pretty. And it's better than using these online systems because I can say, okay, that background, and you can see I even get like shapes. So I don't have to do that extra step, remove the background and these kind of things. It's pretty nice for that. MDN, the Google Docs search was a really interesting one as well. The GitHub Copilot for Docs, it was called. It's not in Copilot yet, but I really found it interesting that it allows you to point to a documentation on GitHub and then get a chat system that is only using that documentation. And I think the cleverest thing they've done is actually that interface up front where it says like, I want to search MDN, but I'm an intermediate developer and I want a balanced response, or I know this material well, I just forgot the syntax of something. I don't want to have an explanation what HTML canvas is, but as a beginner, I want to know what HTML canvas is. So allowing people to filter the content that they do, and there's prompts for that you can do in the background, but giving people an interface for that was a really, really interesting step that nobody else has done. And when you had the search results then from the MDN documentation, you got your chat system that gave you the information, but it also gave you the context where you could go to the web page where it pulled it from and actually find the information in context there. Developer tools are an interesting thing, what they can do with AI, but there's traps in there as well. The biggest one is not integrating with existing tool chains. The people go into ChatGPT, generate some code and copy and paste it over. That's just so 1996, it's just ridiculous. There's no point in that. It should actually be in the system that I use where I code my things. Generating code versus aiding development, like, oh, just trust the generated code and send that into your code base, that's probably a good idea. Offering outdated, invalid, insecure, and unoptimized results. The biggest problem is in these systems that weighing them is expensive and takes a lot of time. So the free systems are like 2 to 3 years old. So when, for example, in front end where I live, when there's new CSS stuff, it doesn't even know about that and gives you solutions that were great 1997. And they keep dying and keep staying in that interface that way. So GitHub Copilot is still the gold standard, and I'm very happy about that because I know the people worked on it. Interestingly enough, European people, not cool Silicon Valley kids. And a really good thing about it is that they did their research, and they also published their research on their blog. They don't say like, oh, we're a magical code editor that does things for you. They give you the insights why things were done the way they were. They did proper research with developers. And they also have all the lessons from designing, iterating, and extending GitHub Copilot. So if you have a company that does code completion systems, this is a really good read as well. So what does it do right? I think one of the things that a lot of people do is function via name completion. So you give it a function name, and it then gives you the function, okay, you probably want to do that. It analyzes the rest of your code around them, so it founds a lot of that information from that, not just random content on the internet. And that's what I like because you open it in the workspace that you already had open and it realized all the bits that you wanted to have. You have that tab completion thing where you can actually type things in and then you actually start tab completion one by one. This is something that IntelliSense and other things had done as well. But I like that as well because you realize when it's going off the tracks, when it's actually not doing the right thing, and you can do it step by step. You have inline creation via prompt. That's what I like as well with a keyboard shortcut, Command D, most editors, where you can actually say like, okay, create something. So you have your chat interface in your source code rather than going to a chat and talking to it and then going back. So in this case, it says like create a Twitter function, and then it gives me the div view. It doesn't even immediately says it is get it in there, but it also makes it part of the version controlling. So I can undo that in the next build if something went wrong. So it's a try before you buy rather than like generate that function and I hope it works. Comment injection is quite interesting as well, where you can say like, okay, give me a function and then actually comment it. This is basically where these cool developers say you don't need comments ever, but it actually kind of makes sense to say like add comments to make it part of the documentation, for example. And that one then analyzes the code, analyzes how it's actually implemented in there. And again, it gives me that div view that says like, okay, what's happening here step by step. Doc comments, Java people know that. I mean, we've been making fun of JS doc for years and years as JavaScript developers, but now we use it as well because we don't want to use TypeScript, so we're basically using the JS docs. But having this like very generic thing to have to write by hand, you letting the machine do that actually makes a lot of sense to me as well. You can also explain code, so you can basically say like highlight a bit and then say explain what this is doing. And then it goes to the chat interface on the side, and that one then tells you bit by bit what the code is doing and how it's actually functioning. This is great for learning a new language. This is great for learning about a code base. This is great for onboarding, and actually makes sense because it's again in the source code and not some document that you have to maintain outside of the source code. Code referencing is interesting as well, where you basically have a function that gets generated, and it basically tells you where in GitHub it's been used before and what license it has. So code completion sometimes gives you code that is not your license and actually is stealing. Nobody will find out, but that's basically a very bad idea. So the code referencing I thought was very clever in this case as well. Workflow integration, like you finished with your code and now you say like, okay, why don't you write me a summary, and why do you write me a step-by-step to actually see the changes and do a walkthrough, and then also a poem for some reason, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, it does these things, and now it actually writes the summary of the pull request, what actually happened there, what changed, and then it actually gave me a step-by-step if you want to test it and what you want to do with it. This is things that make sense if you want to hand it over to another developer, or when you look at your own code 2 days later and you were drunk in between and you actually don't know why you wrote it that way. So it's great that these systems generate that in the version control rather than like as comments in the source code. The terminal integration was also very interesting, that you basically say like question mark, and then it creates a bash script for you. So in this case, take all the videos and in the folder and rename them, resize them, and then it does an explanation what it does, and you can immediately execute it in the command line, or you can discard it from the command line. Again, not leaving the terminal and getting that functionality in there is a super good productivity boost. This is an empty slide to make it more interesting. There's a company called Localfy that I work with, not for, or I work with. And they're really interesting because they actually allow you to take an image from Figma or Adobe XD, Storyblock, or anywhere else, and then generate code from it in different environments like React, Next.js, and also put it into the environment flow or in the version control flow and actually publish the app for you. And what I like most about it is just, it doesn't do it just by creating that thing for you, but it creates components from the graphics. So basically you get the editable source code directly in the editor from that. And they had like 20 years experience using natural language processing and these kind of things. So instead of just having like, oh, that's probably 6,000 divs, it actually realizes that's a heading, and then it gives you a heading element, and this is a button element. So it takes components that already exist and puts them in there. And I think that makes sense because designers have been moving from making designs to moving components as well a long time ago. And then we get still a flat design from them when we start cutting them up into components in our world. So it makes a lot more sense for the system to do that. Now, authoring tools, when it came to like when I said earlier, when Google is doing like a review for you, the biggest mistake that a lot of authoring tools do is not starting with a good word processor. I had a lot of like people, oh, review our content editor. It's a blogging platform that blogs for you. And then it didn't do copy and paste properly. Or I didn't have any line breaks in the thing, or the content was just a random text blob. Disrupting the writing process. While you write, it tells you like the auto-completion that we kind of like on a mobile phone, on a desktop app, or inside Word drives the hell out. I know what I want, go with that sentence, don't put me in that direction and give me like 3 paragraphs or repeat the first 3 or 4 paragraphs again like it did before. Generate tons of text without style matching. So instead of realizing how I started the document and then analyzing my writing style and making me words like I would write them, it just gives me like the happy Californian from 1986 again, that basically we're super excited about. There's this wonderful website that talks about companies being acquired by other companies, and the emails are so wonderfully formulaic, you know. It's like a great opportunity for us, meaning like, yeah, you're all getting sacked. Like our former leadership will be part of the process. They're already on holiday. Like these kind of things. It's very bizarre how formulaic these things come. And repeating content. Like a lot of times when you have generated content, you get like words, just similar words over and over again. One editor I love to bits is Hemingway. Hemingway editor is actually a text editor that just tells you how well you've written, how simple you've written. So it tells you actually the readability score, like grade 4, and what school grade somebody should have to understand your text, and how many words it was, and then it actually how many adverbs you used, use of passive voice, phrases have simpler alternatives, sentences are hard to read, and sentences are too long. So all the things that are wrong are highlighted, so you start changing words around until you get the highlights gone, and then you actually write like Hemingway did, to the point, clear, and easy to understand. And the AI version of that one now does it automatically. So if something is too complex, then it says fix it for me. And it offers you an answer showing your original text and showing you the text under it with the grade that you had to have and the new grade. And then you can say, yes, I take that. That's a great suggestion, or I don't want to have that suggestion. So the machine aids me on making my product better rather than creating the things for me. Video tools have the other big problem that they generate videos without editing options. So you actually just generate a video and then like, okay, where's the different tracks? Where's the different frames? Offering the same as filters in chat systems to a degree, like when you had like the, what was it, the TikTok filters and the Instagram filters. In essence, it was the same for video. And they create packaged contents without tracks. And that's the trap again as well. And that's where VideoTap comes in. VideoTap is another product I love using. It basically allows me to upload a video, and then it creates a blog post. It creates a transcript from it. And from that transcript, it creates blog posts, short clips. It finds interesting bits in the video, creates those smaller videos from it. It creates chapters for YouTube from the video as well. Summaries. It creates tweets and translations, although translations are always a dangerous thing. And subtitles, transcripts, and so on and so forth. What I really like about it is basically it uses the transcript as the interface. So it creates the transcript, you can edit that one, and then you can highlight bits of it and say like, okay, make that bit into a video, cut that bit out, and it would automatically take the video out where this was part of the transcript. So you can actually edit a sound file by editing a text or a video in this case, and it's really, really impressive. So the thing is, we have to consider a few things, like AI is here to stay. Like, we're not going to get rid of it anymore, but it's in such a hype cycle and such a marketing rush that it's just really annoying. So what should it be? A lock-in addiction machine? Should everything become TikTok? Should everything be like, okay, please stay in this app, please stay in this app, please stay in this app? Should it be a distracting helper, like Clippy used to be like, oh, you could turn this into 5 sentences that are incomprehensible instead of that beautiful one that you've written. An automator of the obvious. I like that. Like if I do something all the time over and over again, it should do things for me. And every operating system had that. Apple has Automator. Windows has a scriptability as well of the system, and why doesn't the system recognize what I do and help me along the way and say like, you're repeating yourself, why are you doing this? It could be a one-step process. I remember when Apple's Automator was AppleScript, which was like the perfect programming language. It was a mixture of English and programming and took the worst parts of each. It was utterly incomprehensible. It was Visual Basic was making more sense than this thing. Should it be enhancement to existing use cases? I'm already editing videos, so let's make it easy for me to use these videos that way. Or should it be an eager listener and problem solver? Something in the background. And I love that we basically have that right now. I realized that the other day, let me see if that's going to be embarrassing or not. Could be. I have basically a photo in the display. Oh, it's not even showing. Huh. When you have the photo view in iOS, for example, I got this picture of that person. There's Command-Shift-K, which is not documented anywhere probably. And actually, when you do that, it replaces the background. There's apps for that you can actually download, but this is actually built in. And of course, this uses machine learning, uses detection of the shape and everything. And I absolutely adore this, that it's just in there and I had to find it. And that's what I think AI should become. It should be a helper in the background that is not in my way, but actually does things for me like, hey, that's a picture that has a background. Do you really want to have that background, or do you just want to get something out of there? So I think that's an interesting one. Here's a research that's called the shape of AI, that basically if you want to build AI, to get the answer of my title of the talk, this is a research right now that shows all the patterns that different companies do to have AI built into the process of their app, and what works and what doesn't work. So that's actually pretty lovely that this research happens. And that's all I had, so I thank you very much. We have time for questions if you have any. Dun, dun, dun. Sure. That was not the question, was it? Blimey. Okay. Sure. No, that's the resources. Yeah, that should be fine. This might not be up to date, but I will up to date it later. So you should be fine. Yeah, sure. Don't know how it doesn't do it. Any other questions? Dun, dun, dun.
How did you get the double question mark CLI command? How did you install it? From where it's coming from?
It was called Copilot for CLI. It was a demo. It might still be alive, but it will be part. It is part of GitHub Copilot now. So if you pay for GitHub Copilot, you can actually install it on the command line as well. Don't know if it works in PowerShell yet, but it works on Mac for sure. And there's other bits like that. I mean, there's one wonderfully inappropriate product called the fuck, which actually is if you type something wrong on the command line, you can just type the fuck and it takes your last command and tells you what you probably did wrong in that one. So I love that one. That's something that should be integrated everywhere as well, especially with that sweary bit in it. All right. Cool. I'll be available today. I'll be around tomorrow as well. I'm flying back at 6, so God will, and British Airways. And then you can pick me anytime. If someone of you is from Manchester area, on the 22nd of May, we're going to have a coding competition there called Code 100, which is a live coding competition on stage, and the main prize is €10,000. And it's basically live fast coding, independent of programming language. I'm the one who did all the puzzles that you have to solve, so it's really easy in essence. And it's going to be a good laugh. It's going to be free, and you can come around if you want to. I don't live in London anymore. I live in Berlin now, so if anybody wants to meet me in Berlin, we can do that too. Thank you very much.